Hey guys, Matt Rittman here. I've been creating a Glock model and I'm going through and animating it and showing how it works. And I just wanted to share a few things with you guys as far as what I've been learning throughout the process. And today I'm going to show you how I rigged the magazine, how the bullets are fed through it, and all that good stuff. So why don't we go ahead and jump in? So inside Cinema 4D, we've got our model here, and I'm not going to be showing you how I modeled stuff. That's a separate tutorial. But we've got the spring, we've got the follower that pushes the bullets through the magazine, the bullet, and the magazine housing itself. So let's start with compressing the spring down, and then we'll kind of go from there. And my spring is really just a helix object that I turned into a spline and adjusted the spline so that I could get a custom shape out of it. It's more square than circular. So, and to compress this, we're going to use a squash and stretch deformer. So if you click on your spline, and you click under deformers, hold down shift and click squash and stretch, it'll make that a child of your spline. And we want to compress it starting from the bottom, so we need to set the bottom of our squash and stretch to 0. And then we need to move this to the base, just like that. And our top here needs to be set to the top of the spring, so just pull this up. Now if we change our factor, you'll see that it compresses down, but it also comes out and expands, and we don't want that, so just turn to expand down to 0. We won't be using that. And you'll see we're getting some kind of funky bending here, and that's just because of our positioning of our squash and stretch here. So if we pull this down, we'll get the bottom to be more aligned here. So just like that. And the top, if we just kind of play with our top setting here, that looks good. So there we have it. Just by changing this factor, we can change the expansion of the spring. And it would be nice to actually set this up on its own slider so we don't have to go into the squash and stretch and change that right there. So we're going to start by creating some user data for the topmost object in our scene, the magazine. So click on magazine and click user data, manage user data, and go ahead and add a group and pull this group out of the default one and just name this controls. Controls. So, and then we need to add some data to the control group, so click add data and just name this one magazine feeder. And data type floats correct, and interface we want a slider, so change this to float slider, and that'll give us the nice slider. And just hit OK. And now under magazine we've got a controls tab with our slider. So go ahead and drag this to the viewport, and you'll see if I click off the magazine object, it'll go away. And to get that to stay there on the viewport, just right click, go to display object, go to show always, and you'll see it has magazine here, the name of the object, and I don't like that. I like to clean it up a little bit, so just click that show or display object, and there we go. So I'm going to move this on the left side. So right now it doesn't actually do anything because we haven't connected it to our spring. So with that, we need to use some Expresso. So if you click magazine and click tags, Cinema 4D tags, Expresso. And I've docked my Expresso editor down here just so it's easier to see on my screen. Let's start by actually dragging in the magazine object into our Expresso window. And we need to create a port on here for our magazine feeder. So you can actually do that by, if you click the magazine and there's the controls tab, you can just actually drag this magazine feeder right down in here on this the red side, the out port. And so we need to feed this into what we're going to be controlling. So we're going to be controlling the squash and stretch. So drag that down in here. And what do we want us to control inside squash and stretch? That's going to be the factor, you know. So drag that down into the input. And I could connect this directly, but we're actually going to do it a better way with the Rangemapper. And the Rangemapper kind of tells, it can convert one value to another. For example, a percentage into a degree or that kind of thing. But so just right click here, go to new node, Expresso, calculate Rangemapper. And it's kind of cutting off on your screen, but it's in this list. And there we have it. So go ahead and pipe the magazine feeder into the input. And under the Rangemapper, over here on the right, on our properties, we've got an input range and an output range. And since we set our slider to be a percentage, this needs to be percent. So change that there to percent. And on our squash and stretch factor, this is also a percent. So inside of our Rangemapper, the output range needs to be set to percent as well. And we're going to leave the input to 0 to 100 because that's what our slider is set to. So just leave that alone. And the output lower, for example, if I go into my squash and stretch here and change my factor down here like this, let's just say 16 will be the lower side and 100 will be the, we don't need to go that high. Let's go 80. So 16 and 80 is what we want to be within. So if we click on Rangemapper, and the lower side 16%, the upper side 80%. So now just go ahead and pipe this together, and there we have it. If I change my magazine feeder slider, it's rigged within those ranges 0 to 100%. And I like to hide my squash and stretch from being displayed in the viewport just to make things cleaner. So there we go. Now the next thing we want to do is attach the the feeder here to the top of our spring. And to do that, we're going to use some more Expresso. So with every spline, if you click on the spline, and then we go down to, let me bring this down, the structure manager, you'll see that each of these numbers here correlates to a number, to a point on our spline. So up at the top is 0, and that's down here, and at the bottom 99 is at the top. And we want to connect this feeder here to be where the position of this point is. So yeah, like I said, we're going to use Expresso, and to do that we're going to use the point node. So if we right click, go to new node, Expresso, general, point. And this point node is asking for the object, and the object that we're going to plug into the input side here is our spline. So just pull this in here like this, and then the output of the spline needs to be set to object. So just click on the red output box here and click object and just pipe that in there. Now you'll see when I click my point node here, it says it's asking for a point index, which is right now it's set to 0, which is the bottom point. And if you remember, when I clicked on my structure manager here and clicked on 99, that's the top point. So just set this to 99. And then we need to tell Expresso what it's going to be controlling here. So we're going to control the follower. And before I drag the follower into Expresso as an object, it makes it a lot easier to position where the follower is going to be on the spring if we put it inside of a null object. So click on follower, go to create object null, and then that's going to make it as a child when I hold down Alt on the keyboard, and just rename it to follower position. Now if I drag this into here, so what we want to do is use the global position on the follower. So if you click on the blue input port here, click on coordinates, global position, and just pipe this from the point position to the global position of the follower. And there you go, it's going to snap up here. And it looks like it's not snapping to the proper location because we've got our spline is actually being deformed with a deformer here. Because if I click off the enabling feature of the deformer, you'll see that the spline jumps up to where it should be. So on our point node, we can actually fix this by, if we click on the point node, use deform points. And for whatever reason, it adds a lot more points. And basically all you need to do is crank up this point index until our follower is at the top of our spline. So just start bringing this value up until the top here, until it doesn't go anymore. So right there is fine. So right now, if I were to try to move the follower position, you can't move it because it's being controlled by Expresso, and that's why I put it inside of a null object. And now I can click on my subdivision surface object here and actually move it around and reposition it. So just kind of centering it up within my object here. So now I should be able to, when I drag my slider, it'll be following the position of that top point. And you'll see it kind of jumps around a bit. It's got some lag to it. That's just because of our order of operations and priority. And one quick way to fix that, if I click on my Expresso tag, you can change the priority. And I found that if I put this particular one down to generator, it'll be solid. Pretty solid there. So yeah, the spring and the follower is rigged. So let's go ahead and put the spring and the follower inside of our magazine here. Just drag it in, and I'm going to center it up. That looks good. So yeah, that's still working great. The next thing I want to do is create a bunch of clones of my bullets here so that we can put them inside of the magazine. So if I click on bullet and then come up to MoGraph, come down to cloner, hold Alt and click that, it's going to make the bullet a child of the cloner object. And right now it defaults to linear, the mode set to linear. And I know there's around 15, I think it's 15 cartridges inside of a magazine. So if we just bring this up to 15, then change our Y position down to about that value. So right now they're single file, you know, that's not how they're inserted inside of a magazine. And to fix that, it'd be nice to have each one kind of offset the way it should. And to create an offset, we're going to use a formula effector. So if we click on cloner and go up to MoGraph, Effector, Formula. Where is it at? There it is. Click on Formula, and it's going to do something crazy at first, but if we just go ahead and zero out the formula, and then our parameter here, we don't want to change the scale, so just set this, just turn this off, and we need to write some code in here for the formula. And I'm not any kind of genius when it comes to math and all that stuff, so basically to to set every other clone to be offset, we're going to use a modulo. It's called a modulo function inside Cinema 4D. So to do that, we just type mod and then a parenthesis, ID, semicolon, 2, and then closing parenthesis. And you'll see when I hit enter here, they're going to offset. What was it set to? It was set to 50 centimeters. We don't want to offset it that much. Let's just bring this down to 10. Just like that. So there we have that. And we're actually going to use two formulas. One being we're going to offset these right bullets to the right 10 centimeters and the left side we're going to go negative 10 centimeters. And then you'll see why I'm doing that a little bit later, but let me just show you here. So if I click, let's see here. Yeah, let's go ahead and add another formula, like I said. So click on MoGraph, Effector, Formula, and just zero this out. Click on our cloner, and then go to the Effectors tab and drag that new one in here so that they're both working. And for this one, we're going to offset the other ones. And I should probably show you, if you go into your cloner object and click on Transform, it's got this display option. You can click this to index, and it shows the number of each clone, the index number. And that's why when I did my formula here, we got ID, which is the index. So we got, for example, 0 and then 2. If you want, you can actually read more about the modulo function in Cinema 4D in the help file. If you right click the formula here and go to show help, then you can click a list of formulas. And then, yeah, there's a whole bunch of information in here regarding what the different functions do. So I would encourage you to read that. Oh, and here's the modulo function right here. So anyway, we won't go into deep coding here, but so one formula is going to change the offset one side, and the other one's going to change on the other side. So we got the parameter 10 centimeters. We want this formula to be negative 10. We don't want to affect the scale. So to make this particular formula, we're going to change this to equal 0. And then the other one, we're going to just copy this function here, paste it in, and change the 0 to 1. So then that's going to offset it the way we want. And if we come back to our cloner and bring our position Y down so that they're touching, that's what we're looking for right there. And I'm going to turn these the IDs off, the index display, just so it's easier to see. So to actually change the position of our bullets inside of our magazine, we're going to use the the offset. So if I change the offset right now, you'll see that it's not working the way that we'd like. We want it to the bullets to actually move. So to do that, we actually need to use a spline object as our mode. So if we change the mode to object, it's asking for the object. So if I go into my right side view of the magazine, click on your spline tool, and just click on kind of a general area where you want the bullets to be cloned along. So that's about right there. Go back to my perspective view. I'm gonna actually center my anchor point to my object, and I set a hotkey up for that, but just quickly do it that way. There we go. So now my anchor point is centered within my spline. And when you create a spline, it actually creates it along the Z-axis. if I get my grid here, it creates it along the z-axis. And this is kind of hard to explain, but basically all we need to do to fix the positioning when we, well, let me just show you. If I click on my cloner and put my spline down here, you'll see that it does something funky here to the bullets. So if I click on my spline and click on my anchor point tool, we just need to rotate it on the x-axis here, just negative 90 degrees, or 90 degrees. Click off my... So this is kind of correct, but now we need to go into our cloner under the transform and change our pitch here, the rotation pitch. So if we change this to around negative 72, that's going to look correct. So now we've got our bullets cloned along our spline, and you'll see our spline is centered within the bullets. And we have our one formula changes the offset to the right, and the other formula here changes it to the left. And so if I go in my cloner object and click on object, you'll see my count changed from 15 to 10. We just need to change that back to 15. And then there we go. And we just need to position these better within the magazine housing. And to do that, just click on your spline and just kind of position it where it should be there. The bottom should be, yeah, more or less like that. And you can actually just click on your point tool of your spline. You can kind of position that, fine tune it the way you want. So I'm going to go over here to the right view and just kind of position that a little bit better. Okay, so we've got this set up. So now if we change my offset, because I changed this to an object mode, you'll see that they actually move, which is what we want. But it's also now doing something where it's creating another set of bullets down here at the bottom. And that's because the loop option is selected. So if I uncheck that and then change my offset, that's what we're looking for right there. So, and you'll see that the bullets they should be a little bit tighter knit. So if I go into my formula parameter and change my X value here, I can kind of bring this down, each one of them, to -9, and that's looking a little bit better. And then I kind of want to adjust my top point of my spline so that these are tighter. Yeah, more like that. And actually this should sit down kind of in the magazine a little bit, because they don't feed out the top of the magazine, they come forward out of it. So come back to my perspective view. So yeah, our offset is set up. Now all we have to do is we can actually control the offset with the magazine feeder here, the slider that we set up. So to do that, just drag in your cloner object into the Expresso window, and then if we click on our offset value, bring that in as an input. We need to create a new Rangemapper, so right click, new node, Expresso, calculate Rangemapper, and pipe the magazine feeder output into the input of the Rangemapper. And remember, we need to change our ranges from user defined to %, so just change that to %. And the output is a % because on our cloner offset it's set to %. And we just want to do 0 to 100. So if we go to our Rangemapper, 0 to 100, it's already set up. So just connect these together and it should work the way we want. And you'll see when it gets toward the top here our feeder and bullets kind of intersect a little bit. That's because you can actually fix this within the Rangemapper. The output upper, just start, actually let's bring this down here until we can see our bullet. Just bring the upper up to a value where it's touching kind of the top where it was when we had the slider at the bottom. So there we go. So that's like the general idea. Now I want to take this a little bit further, and basically when the bullets get to the top, it'd be nice to have them kind of slide into the center so that one comes out at a time and they're not kind of popping out the sides here. Because you'll see on our magazine housing that it's got a tapered edge. It's kind of hard to see on my screen, but it's got this taper. And to do that, we can use the new fields option in Cinema 4D. Let's see here. And it actually works with previous versions of Cinema 4D as well, but in R20 they changed it to fields as a fall off. So to do this, click on one of your formulas, click fall off and then linear field, and we want it to go from top to bottom, so change this to -y. And then we want the range to be very small, the length of it. And then position this at the top here. So basically what this is doing is saying anything below this field, it's going to be affected by these formula effectors, and anything above the field, because it's a linear, I keep saying it wrong, anything above it will not be affected. So you'll see as I bring this down, they go to 0, back to their default before we're even using the formulas. And it's doing one side at a time. And we need to do it to both sides. So go ahead and create another fall off for the opposite formula. So click on formula.1, linear field, and direction -y. Bring this down so it's smaller range here, and then just bring this up, and there we go. So you'll see as I click on both these fields here and pull them down, they're overlapping as they get to the top. What I want to do is make it so when they get toward the top here that they kind of push up, and we can use, let's see here, let's use a plane effector. I'm going to pull these fields back up. And on my plane effector, we wanted to change the position Y. So if I pull these up, oops, on my actual parameter here. Oh, you'll see it's not doing anything because I didn't click on my cloner first. So if I click cloner, effectors, and drag my plane into the effectors window, now it's starting to work. So if I click back on my plane and pull these down, basically I need to set up another fall off so that it affects everything above the fall off. So to do that, click on your fall off of your plane effector, click linear, and this is going to be +y, and just change the fall off amount here, and you'll see what it's doing here. Anything above is being affected and below it is not affected. So put that here, and then if I go into my plane effector parameter here, I'm going to bring this up a bit, and you'll have to do some playing around with like where this should be positioned here on each one of these fields, but generally this is working a lot like the way it should. So I noticed they're kind of pulling out here, but you can play with it and really fine-tune things. See, they kind of, each one kind of goes one at a time. What else was I going to show you? Yeah, I think that's working great though. Oh, I see. So you'll see that my plane effector, I only enabled the, let's see here, the Y value, but I'd like them to pull forward a little bit. So just change the Z value, something like that. So now when I do it, they're kind of pulling forward as well as they come out. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Not much to it really, to be honest. So otherwise, yeah, it's pretty simple to attach objects to splines with Expresso and to rig certain things with sliders. So yeah, Cinema 4D it's really powerful. But like I said, if you have any questions, let me know. You can reach me on my website or just shoot me an email or my Twitter channel or anything like that. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, and I'll see you next time.